Quakes are back to winning ways. After a trio of losses in games where the Quakes look to be the better side, the team finally comes ahead in the stat that matters most: goals scored. The Quakes took on the Portland Timbers at home and gave the fans what we've been wanting, a resounding 4-1 statement victory. A lot went into this game, from personnel to tactical changes, so let's discuss it all and more. You're watching the Quakesaholics, and let's get right to it, starting from the lineup. And as we discuss, let us know how you're feeling about this result and the direction of the team. So in terms of lineup, this game really felt like a big shakeup compared to what we're used to. Starting off with availability, it's important to note that both Josef Martínez and Bruno Wilson were unavailable due to injury. There were some rumors that Hernán López was ready to play, but he ultimately decided to not dress with the team and instead played for the Town FC on Sunday in a 5-0 statement win against Portland's MLS Next Pro team. So talk about some deforestation. Bruno Wilson's injury gave Muni another consecutive start, while Josef's absence led to a shift from the usual two-striker system to a front three. That opened up an opportunity for Buda to get his fourth start of the season and allowed Espinoza to return to his more natural right-wing position. Espinoza's move to the right wing was also made possible by DeJuan Jones being played as a right wing back, which was somewhat of an unexpected move. Jones had made his Quakes debut the previous weekend against Columbus playing as a left back, and that aligned with where he's been playing for most of his career. So at least I was under the impression that Jones' arrival to the Quakes was that he was going to be playing as a left wing back, or maybe a left back. With that expectation in mind, it was definitely confusing to see both Costa and Jones listed in the starting 11 ahead of the game, but I think it ended up working out pretty well. That decision can be interpreted in a couple ways. Either Bruce Arena really values players playing on their dominant foot side, or Jones was placed on the right side specifically to allow Espinoza to play higher up the field, given that the team was only going to be playing with the one striker for this game. Both approaches have their merits. Espinoza playing higher is clearly an attacking benefit, and Jones does bring more defensive solidity compared to Espinoza would in that role, and especially when we're being faced up against teams that heavily rely on their wingers. Think of teams like Sporting Kansas City, for example. However, Espinoza likely can't play right wing if we return to using two strikers, as the formation would become way too top heavy at that point. So whatever the decision making was for this, we probably won't know until the squad is fully healthy again and we see what are all the options and what Bruce Arena eventually goes for, and hopefully that isn't too far off now. As for the back line, it was unchanged from the Columbus match: Romney, Muni, and Floriani. As mentioned earlier, Muni comes in to fill in for Bruno Wilson while he's injured, but the choice to start Floriani over Rodrigues definitely feels like a clear tactical decision at this point. We broke down the goals in the Sporting Kansas City game in a previous video, and based on those defensive errors, it seems Bruce Arena agrees Rodrigues looked largely responsible for that disastrous performance. Of course, there's always a chance that Rodrigues is dealing with a minor injury and Bruce is just being cautious and only dressing him up in case there's an emergency, because at the moment there's no other center back depth. But since he was subbed in late in the game for Floriani, it seems more likely that this is purely a tactical decision. I don't think he would expose Rodrigues to an injury for no reason. Playing with three at the back, three up front, and wing backs meant only two midfielders were left in the center, Leroux and Harkes, and the team went without a clear number 10. At first glance, that seems like a pretty thin midfield, but Costa and Jones were pushing up for the majority of the game, so really the shape was essentially like a 3-4-3. It never felt like we were lacking control in the middle of the field, largely thanks to Leroux and Harkes. Both players know how to carry the ball forward. Leroux in particular really stands out, and I think this was another great performance. He can dribble, he can find space, and constantly is making line-breaking passes. Sure, he occasionally does get caught up in traffic, but that's often because he's drawing multiple defenders at this point, and I think that alone speaks to how much his reputation is really growing in this league. I did have some hesitation about not having a true number 10 on the field. Niko and Pellegrino have played that role over the past few games while Hernan's been out, and I think Niko especially has looked good in that position, but shifting to a front three means that someone somewhere had to get sacrificed, and I think that was just the decision that had to be made. And while there was doubt at the beginning of the match, that was pretty quickly put to rest as the goals started coming. So let's talk about those goals. The Quakes got off to a really fast start in getting on the goal sheet. Beau Leroux played a pass through the middle to Chicho, who quickly found DeJuan Jones sprinting down the right side of the field. Espinoza, already positioned higher up on the field thanks to the formation change, drifts into space at the top of the box. Jones sees him and delivers a great layoff, and Espinoza finishes with a shot to the far post. The second goal, which was only minutes later, Espinoza started this one by receiving the ball in Portland's final third on the left side of the field and quickly passes to Buda. With the defender on Buda's back and another one closing in, Buda makes a quick feint and then pretty delicately just releases the ball into space for Espinoza to run onto. Buda, having drawn those two defenders, really opened up a lot of space in the box, and Espinoza took full advantage of that. He dribbles in towards goal and easily finishes to secure his brace for the night. And we saw this throughout the whole game, but really these two goals sum it up pretty clearly that playing Espinoza higher up the field is going to lead to more chances. It's going to lead to assists, it's going to lead to goals. And you can see very clearly that his position here directly impacts this game and gives us 2 goals. And again, what felt like just moments later, Chicho links up with DeJuan Jones on the right side of the field and does a pretty quick 1-2 and finds himself running straight on goal. He He carries the ball into the box and got a great shot off to the near post. By this point, it was like 30 minutes into the game. The game felt pretty secure, but it wasn't totally smooth sailing by any means. Portland did score in the 41st minute in a play that saw Floriani get beat by his man and then overrun by a second oncoming Timbers attacker. The defense was left pretty unbalanced, and in that, a pass was found to Mora in the center of the box. There was some fault for Floriani for losing his first duel, but also some fault to Muni for not seeing and anticipating that second runner, given he wasn't actively marking anyone. And you can even say that maybe there's some fault to Leroux for not tracking the runner in the first place. I think all these are small, forgivable mistakes that just collectively resulted in conceding a goal. The half ended 3-1, and it wasn't until the end of the game that the Quakes really sealed this win. After regaining possession during a midfield scramble, Espinoza sends a lob pass out to Chicho on the left wing. Chicho drove forward, spotted Buda's run, and delivered a perfect cross for Buda to tap in with ease. And while 4-1 is already an impressive scoreline, it honestly just doesn't really reflect how lopsided this felt at times. Chicho had a goal disallowed for a tight offside call that went to VAR, and then Beau Leroux earned a penalty kick that was later also overturned by VAR. I think the offside decision was correct, but the foul on Leroux definitely looked worthy of the original call. So if I haven't said this by now, this was really a statement win. This is probably the most convincing win of the season. And yes, we had a 4-0 against RSL and a 6-1 against DC, but as we discussed, those teams were clearly worse than the Quakes. The Quakes should have won those games, and it was just a matter of how many goals they'd win by. Portland, however, came into this game as second in the West, having won half of their games played, and with 3 wins on the road out of 6 games played. And in fact, they have more points on the road than they do at home. And Portland has climbed the standings with one of their designated players, Jonathan Rodrigues, injured for the majority of the season. It's unclear why he didn't play in this game, because he has been getting reintegrated into their squad over the past 3 games, but it's been minutes here, minutes there, nothing like a full game by any means. But his absence in this game in no way takes away from this result. Portland has shown that they play well without him, and we still beat them. So what I'm trying to get at right now is that this just felt like the most complete team that the Quakes have faced, and we were able to get 3 points out of it. Yes, we didn't statistically dominate the way that we have in other games. We've shown the stats before where it's just blue straight down the column for passing, possession, whatever you want to look at. But in this game, it was definitely more balanced, but Quakes were actually putting away their goals, putting away their opportunities. And another way of thinking about the significance of this win, just think and ask yourself, when was the last time the Quakes beat a team this high in the standings? I certainly can't remember that. So yeah, great win by the team. Now, with a win like this, it does bring up a question. Is this the team that should play going forward? Is this the tactical setup that we should be playing going forward? In short term, it seems pretty clear that, yeah, don't fix something that isn't broken. This same defense played well against Columbus despite the loss, and now pushing Espinoza up the field seems to have improved our goal scoring ability. But this gets more difficult to decide on as players are available again, and I'm mainly talking about when Josef Martínez and Hernán López are ready to be reintegrated with the team. Against Portland, the Quakes played without a clear number 10, which really brings into question where Hernan fits into this whole schema. And it doesn't seem like we can fit both strikers and Espinoza in the front line without sacrificing a position in the defense or midfield. And honestly, that just is not a good solution. And then even down to the strikers themselves, choosing between Josef Martínez and Chicho is just as difficult. Chicho is leading the Golden Boot race with 7 goals, and Josef is only trailing by 1 goal. And keep in mind, Josef has played fewer games due to injury and time away with the Venezuelan national team. So both strikers are firing on all cylinders. It's great to have all these options, but eventually Bruce is going to have to make some tough decisions, and it seems like there's at least 3 options to go with here. The first switch that we can make is if we go back to what we were seeing at the beginning of the season. This is probably the simplest. It's a 5-3-2, or you can look at it as a 3-5-2 when we're attacking. You can call it what it is, but this is more or less how it sets up with Jones and Espinoza as the wingbacks. And Jones can be switched out for Costa, but given that we just signed Jones, I do think that it makes sense that he would be starting there. This allows for Hernan to be cleanly reintegrated with the midfield, and then Josef and Chicho up top. Really, the only argument against switching to this is that we're moving Espinoza down the field. We saw that in this game, having him higher up the field was really useful. He had the Buda pass in the second goal that we mentioned where he just ran in and shot on goal. And for the first goal, he was already up the field and was able to run into this space as DeJuan Jones was running up this side of the field. The next option would be something like this. It would be keep the 3-4-3, but then you bring in Hernan directly into midfield and have to make a decision between sacrificing Harkes or Leroux. But with this, you do still have to pick between Josef and Chicho, and that's just as much of a headache. I personally don't think that this is very likely, but it is something to consider. And lastly, the third option, this would be a pretty radical change for Bruce Arena. What we've seen, this would be a 4 in the back. We haven't really seen this except in games where we're trailing. In this case, I've listed all the center backs here because we haven't seen 2 center backs, so I have no idea how Bruce Arena would go about this. In this case, The benefit is that you can fit Hernan with Harkes and Leroux, and you have Espinoza up the field, and then the only really headache, as we've discussed before, is choosing between Josef and Chicho. The seemingly more obvious solution out of all this is just go simple, go with the first approach, since it's getting all of our best players on the field, and it's something that we've already seen Bruce go to, and when everyone was available, that is what his decision was. But I think there is room for arguments for the other lineups just because of the recent success and Bruce Arena's philosophy that names will not outweigh current form. Floriani over Rodrigues is proof of that. Pellegrino sitting on the bench in so many games this season is proof of that. And even Niko on the bench as well in recent games. Niko's been playing well, and in this game, we decided to not play with the number 10. I don't think Bruce Arena has pressure to immediately bring in Hernan if there's a system that is already working. I do think Hernan should play given his talent, but I don't think the team is at a point to be built completely around him. That position needs to be earned just like everyone else, and Hernan is a player that this season and last has shown moments of bad decision-making, over-dribbling, and at times forced passes. Not to mention that unnecessary red card against Kansas City, which could have cost us 3 points on the road. Again, his talent is unquestionable. But when you have players like Leroux and Harkes who are making the correct decision game after game and not exposing the team to bad situations, it's hard to argue that they should be replaced. And if something like the 3-4-3 formation that we saw against Portland is the most effective for this team to get results, that position in the midfield is going to be really contested between all these talented players. And now with the addition of Noel Buck, it just gets even more competitive. But all this is a really good problem to have. Quakes fans have been wanting depth for years now, and I think we finally have it. It seems like every position has multiple strong options with the exception of goalkeeping. What all these formations boil down to, though, is how the Quakes are going to score goals. And that's one thing they've definitely shown this year, that they can score goals. No team has more goals than the Quakes this season. Even the goal scoring itself is pretty well distributed between having Chicho and Josef as leaders in the Golden Boot race and having multiple defenders and a couple midfielders having goals this season already. And when it comes to assists, Espinoza is leading the team and league with 7 assists already. And keep in mind, the club record is 14 in one season, and he's already halfway there in less than a third of the way through the season. So while the formation and lineup might not be totally clear, I do think a few things are. Bruce Arena likes playing with 3 center backs. The Quakes have depth, and the Quakes have a lot of goals in them. It's an exciting time to be a Quakes fan, and with this win against Portland, that's the proof that we've been waiting for. With all that in mind, let me know what you're thinking. I'm ecstatic about this win, looking forward to the next game. It will be a midweek game against Sacramento Republic in the Open Cup. That is a rival that has been like a thorn in our side for the past couple of years. In the past 2 meetings that we've had with them in the Open Cup, those 2 were on the road. They ended disastrously because of really poor team management. We'll see how Bruce Arena takes on this challenge in the Open Cup. We haven't seen him with the Quakes in the Open Cup yet, but given the tactical adaptability and flexibility that he's shown across the now 11 matches in MLS, I do have more confidence than when we were, under Lucci or Ian Russell or even Matias Almeida. This game being played at home does give us the advantage. The last 2 times, like I mentioned, we're on the road. We will find out pretty quickly how Bruce Arena sees the Open Cup and how much importance he gives to it. And if all goes well, we advance to the next round, and we're looking ahead to the next MLS game on the road against the Colorado Rapids. So yeah, that's all for this one. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.